From a desperate need to see some more of their champ ultimately backfiring in the long run, to a return to edgier content leaving a bad taste in their mouths. WWE fans definitely got what they wanted on these occasions, but they likely regretted asking for it when all was said and done. Gareth here from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 times WWE gave fans exactly what they wanted and they hated it. Number 10, Dean Ambrose turning on his brothers. From the second the one-time Dean Ambrose rocked back up onto the WWE scene in August 2018 post-tricep injury, fans were quickly formulating plans in their minds as to when the evidently bitter lunatic Fringe would inevitably stab his Shield brethren in the back. Having the former WWE champion embrace the darkness for the first time in an age seemed like a no-brainer too, with the newly beefed-up badass seemingly champing at the bit to explore exciting heelish territory once again, and fans evidently growing tired of his increasingly stale run as a face within the company. Timing is everything in this balmy business though, and opting to pull the heel turn trigger on the same night Ambrose's Shield buddy Roman Reigns announced his leukemia had returned looked like a dreadful call out of the gates. On the back of such a heartbreaking real-life occurrence unfolding in front of their eyes on live TV, fans simply did not want to see the face unit implode at that exact moment. And things never really recovered for Ambrose from that point on. His subsequent blood feud with Seth Rollins never really got going, the shift towards a strange Bane-inspired gimmick didn't click with the crowd, and a fed-up Ambrose ultimately decided enough was enough by the time 2019 rolled around. Number 9, a full-time world champion. WrestleMania 35 seemed to signal the beginning of an era fans had long been aggressively banging the drum for. After seeing off the Beast Incarnate and Planet's champion at the Show of Shows, Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston seem poised to finally deliver the full-time world champion goods, popping up on weekly television with their newly won straps, and accepting all challenges in their babyface bid to give the audience a real fighting champion. Only both reigns never really eclipsed the moment these underdog stars won the straps in the first place, with fans even outright turning on the architect by the time the supposed face and worker they'd longed to see return to the top of the mountain dropped the title to The Fiend at that year's Crown Jewel pay-per-view. With WWE seemingly on the cusp of once again splitting up its world titles sooner rather than later, and no doubt aiming to boast a few more full-time top champs in the wake of Roman Reigns' recent largely absent undisputed reign, you can bet Papa H won't be looking to repeat these sort of fiendish fumbles in the coming years. Number 8, edgier content. Seemingly from the second WWE's overall transition into PG waters was made official in 2008, a common argument sent the sports entertainment giant's way has revolved around a lack of edgier content, directly leading to a drop in quality when it comes to the all-round action seen going down week to week. Yet time and time again, history has provided a boatload of hilarious evidence that WWE's attempts to unleash experimental and jaw-dropping TV have often led to a great many more laughable occurrences than genuinely gripping programming. From uncomfortable attempts at pulling in the younger demographic via sexy NXT shenanigans, to the promotion's odd passion for blinding its stars during its performance center stint in the thick of the pandemic. Many would have no doubt happily taken a set of steel steps to the eyeball instead of witnessing WWE try and fail to consistently shock their universe with cringy stunts and shameless sex-obsessed skits. And with the TV14 era set to be revisited before long, you can bet you haven't heard the last of Theory's horny fascination with Scarlett's nails. Number 7, bring back insert legend here. Absence undoubtedly makes the heart grow fonder, and in the case of the majority of the one-time WWE icons who decided to take some time away from the spotlight, their almost inevitable return to the fold is generally met with a rather huge pep. The likes of Goldberg and Batista both undoubtedly experienced that particular euphoria, for example, upon returning to the WWE mix in 2016 and 2014 respectively. Yet in those infamous cases, fans quickly learned the hard way that sometimes the idea of a long-awaited comeback is far better than the reality. Hot on the heels of pulverizing Brock Lesnar in an instantly iconic Survivor Series 2016 squash, most folks almost immediately grew tired of seeing Old Bill stagger around a ring and dangerously jackhammer his way into main event spots over their full-time favorites. And the same could be said of Dave Batista too, with his initial warm reception soon turning into the wrong sort of heat the minute it became clear the part-time Hollywood sensation would be wiggling into the WrestleMania 30 main event over the likes of CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. At least Big Dave knew when to call it a day, mind. Number 6, more wrestling. The key element that left the great many die-hard supporters of all things wrestling consistently pulling their hair out over the last 2 decades or so was the fact WWE's wrestling shows tended to be sorely lacking exactly that, wrestling. So the minute good old Trips got his hands on the main roster wheel in July, fans were already bracing themselves for a WWE product that would finally give its frankly staggering amount of talented workers the space to craft more scintillating and unique in-ring showcases. Only when said stars were finally gifted that freedom to paint whatever the hell they like on the canvas recently, not every crowd were quick to lose their minds over the sight of some genuinely brilliant in-ring action. Take Dolph Ziggler and Chad Gable's thrilling battle on August 8's Red Show, highlighting the pair's legitimate amateur backgrounds early on, before settling into a more traditional collection of electric and athletic big moves as the match unfolded. Instead of pulling the live audience in from the get-go, much of the simply mesmerizing action was met with crickets from those in attendance until the explosive closing stretch. Simply put, many folks seem to want more wrestling, just not that sort of wrestling. Charming. Number 5, so many dream matches. What was once the source of many a bout of unfiltered joy has now become a phrase that leaves most WWE fans preparing themselves for the worst. Your presenter is of course talking about the consistent sports entertainment promise of a dream match being pumped into the WWE landscape, only for the end product to actually resemble a nightmare bout instead. Yeah, that may be a tad harsh. The likes of AJ Styles vs Edge recently, for example, while perhaps not meeting the lofty standards some folks had set in their minds when fantasizing about the day the Phenomenal One finally came to blows with a rated-R superstar, was still a serviceable show of shows showcase. But there's no getting away from the fact that decent and good isn't what many passionate WWE watchers were pleading for upon winning this dream match, along with underwhelming fantasy bouts like Sting vs Triple H, The Rock vs John Cena, and Ricochet vs Brock Lesnar into existence. Number 4, Roman Reigns main event star. It's often forgotten about due to the simply toxic levels of hate sent the star's way upon finally having the rocket strapped to his back in 2015, but just 1 year before that, fans were left simply begging for the big dog to come out on top in the Royal Rumble match. On the back of being justifiably pissed at the sight of Daniel Bryan being completely left out of the over-the-top rope spectacle, and CM Punk being dumped out of the contest late in the day, Reigns taking up a spot in the 2014 Final 2 opened the door for a white-hot reaction for the Shield's muscle. The future world champion had already put on a breakout showing during the bout itself up to that point, but his status as crowd favorite was only cemented further upon coming to blows with an entirely rejected and eventually victorious Batista as the two collided over the right to challenge for the big one at WrestleMania 30. So it's not too hard to see why WWE happily opted to have Reigns go one further a year down the road. Only by the time the trigger was ultimately pulled on Roman's reign at the top, fans had already started to sour on the idea of him being positioned as the second coming of John Cena. Number 3, a WCW invasion. In theory, the concept of names from WWE's one-time rivals WCW turning up on Vince McMahon's show to kickstart an all-out war on weekly television was the stuff of every Attitude Era fan's dreams. And while McMahon would actually find a way to give his audience exactly that, in a way, the end result wasn't what many had initially been hoping for during those gripping Monday Night War evenings spent channel hopping. Instead of seeing the likes of Goldberg, the NWO, and Sting march down the Monday Night Raw ramp and collide with WWE's finest, the fact many of those iconic names were all too happy to stay at home and wait out their Time Warner contracts led to much of the invading WCW/ECW roster being made up of less eye-catching figures. The fact the eventual Invasion pay-per-view still managed to become one of the highest-grossing pay-per-views of all time proves that WWE definitely captured lightning in a bottle with the highly anticipated collision between the Alliance and Team WWF. But many were still left wondering what could have been had the real WCW MVPs been unleashed on Vince McMahon's All-Stars instead. Number 2, a champion you can believe in. Becky Lynch went full Mystic Mac a year or so ago when confessing to the Monday Night Raw live audience that if Liv Morgan would have bested big-time Bex during her pursuit of the Red Women's strap, you would find every reason to doubt the same woman that convinced you to believe in her. Sure enough, fast forward to 2022, and the long-time adored babyface is currently reigning as the SmackDown Women's Champion. And instead of being celebrated as a modern-day people's champ, Morgan has found herself being booed out of the building and serenaded by "You Tapped Out" chants in the wake of defending her strap against Ronda Rousey at SummerSlam 2022. Obviously, the nature of Liv's dodgy victory against the baddest woman on the planet didn't exactly help her cause. However, the sheer speed in which fans have opted to turn their backs on a star they had consistently gotten behind for some time is still rather shocking, and it's something that has clearly caught some of Morgan's WWE colleagues by surprise too, with the likes of Rhea Ripley and Kayla Braxton branding said SmackDown fans as fickle and disrespectful respectively in the aftermath. Number 1, call them up. Largely through no fault of their own, just about every single name developmental devoted fans begged to see brought up to the main roster scene quickly left those same folks wondering why they bothered getting excited about their call-up in the first place. From bringers of doomsday to seemingly limitless sensations, fans could clearly sense the potential these one-time black and gold darlings had to become serious players in the supposed big leagues. But once their beloved former NXT faves found themselves being nudged through Vinnie Mac's main roster converter, what generally came out the other side was often as dispiriting as it was inevitable. Admittedly, there is now reason for some newfound hope when it pertains to the next generation of NXT prospects, with the one-time leader of the black and gold pack likely making it his mission to right the majority of those recurring wrongs upon taking control of Raw and SmackDown's creative going forward. But that still won't erase the memory of the countless NXT entities fans were forced to witness be chewed up and spat out on live TV by an out-of-touch billionaire who was more concerned with bulging biceps and skyscrapers than following through on his son-in-law's well-received vision for the future. And that's our list of any of the times WWE gave fans exactly what they wanted and they hated it. Let us know all about them in the comments section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're there. Also, if this kind of thing is your bag, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more awesome articles just like the one this video you're watching right now is based on. I have been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for watching this lovely video today. Hopefully I'll see you very, very soon, but in the meantime, be good to yourself. Bye bye.